Pete, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
About 20 years ago, eh?
It was 20 years ago,
it probably was. Yeah. Sounds about right.
How long were you Minister of Health for?
Just for 2 or 3 years. Annette King was the minister for years before me, and David Cunliffe actually very briefly after me. But in the 9 years that I was in Cabinet, I think Annette was Health Minister for probably 5.5 or 6 of those. And then we all got swapped around, and I did my time. It's a challenging, addictive portfolio. One never controls the health system. One only ever tries to manage it a bit better. In the way, I suppose you could say that it's doomed to fail because mortality still hovers around 100%. But anyway, I remember those days really fondly, and I do remember our meeting. There you go.
Yeah, no, and you did a great job, and you saved, as a consequence of your intervention, kids can now be born in the maternity unit at Wellington Hospital. Can I say though, it was sort of illustrative of what you're talking about. We'll come to Dunedin Hospital in a second, but what you're talking about. In that particular case, a series of health bureaucrats, not clinicians, but health bureaucrats, made a decision that the best way to save money was to actually transfer a service somewhere else, 70 kilometres away to another city. And you looked at it and went, well, that doesn't make sense. And we looked at it and we said, that doesn't make sense either. Do you sometimes get, even as a Minister of Health, a perception that you've just sort of alluded to it in a funny sort of way, you're not in charge of the portfolio, you've just got to try and get in the way of bureaucrats making bad decisions?
Yeah, a little bit. I think to get a little bit serious, there now is no child cancer service in Dunedin, and I think that is a good thing. And so we are. So why am I saying that? Because you can't have everything everywhere. So you might actually, well, with the exception of some things like birthing facilities, because they are universally needed. We have birthing facilities in Te Ao now, Michael. I, as chair of the Southern District Health Board until it got shut down, I saw the need to address rural maternity services, but some services, and I'm instancing child cancer as an example, are best not delivered everywhere. They're best delivered in a few centres. It's best for the child to travel, for the parents to have to travel and be have their lives disrupted, because otherwise there isn't the clinical throughput to keep clinicians as good as we want them to be. So sometimes you need to take services away, but not in the case of birthing.
Okay. That's a good discussion for another day, and I'm sure we'll have it. Listen, I've gone and done some research on this before I came to talk to you today. You were, I think, the local advisory group chair. I think that was your official title, Pete, for the last government, and advising them on the Dunedin Hospital rebuild project, or the build project. Do you still hold that current role?
It's a bit confusing, Michael. We shouldn't make this conversation about me, but quickly, I was the chair of the DHB for about 18 months.
Yeah.
Before that, I headed up a thing called the Southern Partnership Group, which was the governance body for the new Dunedin Hospital. So that was the body that chose the site, for example, that got things underway. And I did that for 3 years, and it was the point where we decided how many buildings we'd have, where we'd have them, what would be in the little one, what would be in the big one. We got the business planning through We got caught up with all the digital things that we needed to do. So I was doing all that, and then in addition to that, I headed up a thing called the Local Advisory Group that you mentioned, which was not building a hospital, but was saying what were the things that needed to happen around the hospital. Do we need to change land transport? Do we need to change the way that we think about energy production and whether what are we going to do with the current system of heating the hospital for the new hospital? What are we going to do with workforce, not health workforce, but construction workforce? How are we going to find that? What are we going to do to ensure that we get the university and the hospital well linked up, or the Polytechnic for that matter? So that was all the local advisory government stuff, and I still do that role.
Okay.
But I'm no longer involved in the governance of the project itself. I got the boot. Actually, I got the boot, and then they gave me another job, and I resigned from that in December because it wasn't going anywhere.
Okay.
So
I presume you got the boot because you were the wrong political flavour. Is that right?
No, I got the boot. I got the boot for the right reason. I got the boot because we started to build the thing.
Right.
And once you start to build, I don't know how to build anything. I do know quite a lot about what the health system requires and what it doesn't require, and I do know quite a lot about managing people, including people who've very often got rather strong opinions. So I'm quite good at that, but I don't know how to build anything. And when we'd finished the basic planning and got the thing shrunk down to what it needed to be, because it was always wanting to get bigger than it needed to be, then I got shifted on by my own Labor government cabinet, and someone who knew something about building was put in my place. I stayed on the committee or the group, but I didn't chair it.
Okay. All right. Now, as I said, going to prepare for this interview with you, Pete, and because I live in the Otago region, I went back and had a look at basically the start of this project up until the announcement of yesterday. And it seems to be a project that was fraught, I think that's the word, from almost the first, and you've lived through it, so you'd know that much better than I. But originally it was, I see, costed at $1.4 million. Then it moved to 1.5. Then there was a year ago, the Labor government looked at it and went, God, we've got to try and get some savings out of that. So they saw that there was an extra $200 million required and took $90 million out of it, which I think had got the protest going from the Dunedin City Council at that stage. And then now there is a suggestion from the announcement of Dr. Shane Reti and the Infrastructure Minister Chris Bishop that the final cost could be in the vicinity of $3 billion, which is why they've made this announcement of capping expenditure at about $1.88, $1.9 million for the project. If you were in their position, would you have made the same decision? And if not, why?
Yeah. Okay, so I've got two key points to make here, and I'll make both of them quickly, and then if you want to, I can dig into them.
Go for your life.
The first is that the $3 billion figure is an invention. It's a manufactured crisis. In yesterday's announcement, the $3 billion included a bunch of things, and I'll go into the detail if you want, that have never been part of the project. And yet, they seem to have crept in, and ministers have seemed to stack the project with this stuff until it hits $3 billion. So that's the first comment. The second comment is that although they have ramped up the costs significantly, about $500 million worth, it's still a really expensive project, and it has really increased significantly over the years, and your analysis that you just gave, rough enough, is about what's happened. So even though I'm saying they've made it a bigger mess than it really is, it's still a pretty big increase. Yeah. So what to do? Well, it seems to me that what you do is that you say to your government, not only are you entitled to, you're obliged to go into the market, do more market engagement, go and visit all of the companies, do what I did, go over to Sydney, visit all the companies of major construction companies in Australia, let them know what's going on, engage the market, improve the quality of competition, because I know that some of those subcontractors, there was only one bid for them, and do what government should do to make sure the best deal is available for the taxpayer. And when those figures come in, when that process is done, and it turns out that the cost is going to be X, and you've allowed for only 80% of X, too bloody bad. You're either going to build a hospital or you're not. And if you've budgeted $1 billion to build a motorway and it only gets you halfway to point B or 3/4 of the way to point B, you either build all of it or you build none of it.